G'day guys, Matty here from Rum and Que, and today we're going to run you through the king of barbecue, which is the brisket. Big cuts of meat, big beefy flavours, but really not that hard to cook if you know what you're doing. We've picked up today a beautifully marbled New Zealand brisket. We're going to trim some of this hard white fat off, but to be quite honest with you, there isn't a whole lot to do in the way of trimming. We're just going to shape this and get it to a nice uniform shape. So the brisket comes from the front of the cow, it comes from the chest, so it's a hard working muscle. All right, so it's going to be our job to cook this nice and slowly, break down some of that collagen and turn it into beautiful, gelatinous, lovely to eat meat. What we can do with the trimmings is we can make this into beautiful mince, or if you like doing curries at home, just cube this stuff up, put it into your crock pot with your favourite curry sauce and enjoy this brisket to its fullest. To start off with, I'm just going to make sure that I get this nice and round point here. I'm going to cut off these sharp edges because they're just going to, they just won't cook right, and to be quite honest, they'll just probably end up a little bit burnt. So there's two muscles that make up this brisket. We've got the flat, and you see the grain. The grain is actually running this way, all right? Now what we've got on top here is this other piece. It's another muscle. We refer to that as the point. Now that grain's running back this way. So this bit here, this point, is far more fatty than the flat. So you've got a lot of flavor here, okay? This is gonna take a little bit more to render. And that's why during the cook, you'll see us, we'll either wrap it or we'll boat it, just to keep some of that moisture and keep some of that steam coming up so we get an even texture. You'll see that this bit sort of thins out a little bit. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of that off. We'll flip it over and just have a look at the other side. So we'll start with the big bit here. We'll just take him right off. Work slowly, don't make any big commitments. Just work away at the edge nice and slowly. Take some of this off. I wouldn't worry too much about the silver skin. You know, some cuts of beef, it's important to get rid of the silver skin, but certainly not a cut like this. We've got this heel here, which again is a bit fatty. So I'm going to take that off and just working around, just giving that brisket a nice kind of oval shape. Now, if you don't take off the right amount of fat, or if you leave that hard white fat on, it's going to be very hard for the rub to adhere to it. So just think about what you're going to do next. We're going to put some seasoning on this. If it's too hard, it's just going to repel all of that flavor and you're not going to get a nice seasoned brisket. Now on top of here, we've just got to cut this white, soft, jelly-like fat. So we don't need to go too hard with this, but I'm going to take some off. The reason I'm taking this stuff off here is because I want a bit more of a uniform layer of fat across the whole thing. Where the point meets the flat, you've got a really thick seam of fat in here, all right? When we cook this later and I cut it for you, you'll be able to see that's where all of that moisture comes from. So again, don't go too hard in here, but feel free to get rid of some of that real white chalky fat. And you've got this kind of shark's fin. So when this cooks, it'll kind of stand up like a shark's fin. So depending on what sort of headroom you've got in your barbecue, you might want to consider just taking a little bit of that off. So that's about it. I'm pretty happy with that. We're going to use our all-purpose beef rub, which is our bull dust. And I'll start on the underside. And just like salt and pepper, just add your seasoning. How much do you use? Well, how much salt and pepper do you use? Because this will be cooking for several hours, the rub and the flavors will break down over time. And we are looking to build some significant bark too. So a nice chunky rub like this certainly helps in that bark development. And that bark, although it's going to look burnt when we're finished, it's not going to be burnt, it's just going to be that flavorful bark. And we're just going to leave that for about 10 minutes or so, as that salt's going to work on the surface of the meat. It's going to open up the pores and it's going to start to sweat a little bit. So I only really do this about 2 hours before I'm going to cook it. So we're just going to carry on and season the top. Same rub, bull dust here. Just gonna come over the top, making sure we get the sides. So make sure you get seasoning over the whole brisket, all the nooks and crannies. Now that it's all seasoned, just go and attend to your smoker, get that heat dialed in, get the smoke dialed in, and then we'll come back and we'll put this in the barbecue and we'll get going. We're gonna use our favorite heat beads lump. Now this is a natural product. It's basically hardwood that's been burnt down into charcoal. This is gonna offer some nice flavor and also some good heat. But we're gonna mix that today with our briquettes. So the briquettes aren't a natural product. These are a pressed carbon. So what this is gonna do is give us that longevity in heat. So a perfect mix between the two. Now to help with the flavour today, we're gonna use some of some of New Zealand's finest timber, which is Pahutakawa. It's a nice sweet flavour with a medium smoke flavour as well. So perfect for beef. Now, our pit of choice today, we're gonna use the Bronco Pro. As you can see, it's a drum type smoker. We've got the basket at the bottom, which is gonna be full of fuel. And then we've got an air intake and we've got an exhaust. All right, so that's how we're gonna regulate the temperature. And we've got a cooking rack on top with a deflector plate halfway down. So it's gonna be an indirect cook today. The biggest issue that I come across when I talk to newbies about smoking and starting with charcoal is that people most commonly think there's a lot of faff and a lot of drama with starting charcoal. But one of my favorite things to use is our flamethrower, right? So this is an LPG torch and this will get things moving pretty quickly, all right? So it's pretty easy. Turn it on, knock that back a little bit. Just a little starter and then a nice trigger for plenty of action. So today, you know, it's sort of about that 300 Fahrenheit. We're gonna expect to run this brisket for about 7 hours, give or take an hour or so. That's gonna build a nice bark, which is gonna give us that beautiful barbecue flavor. So it's pretty simple. We've got a cooking grill at the top, so we're gonna remove that. We've got our deflector plate, which I've wrapped in foil. So that's just gonna keep it nice and clean, so just a bit easier on the maintenance. And then we've got our firebox down the bottom, which we're gonna fill with a combination of our lump, our briquettes, and we're gonna put a little bit of smoking wood in there. They're pretty simple. All right, so we started our charcoal and our briquettes. We don't want too much of a fire. We want to bring it up nice and gently because if we overshoot our temperature, it's gonna be hard to bring it back down. We're just gonna place one directly on the fire and then a couple around the perimeter so we get smoke over several hours. All right, we'll put our deflector back in. And then our grill on top. Close the lid, open our vents, and we'll just keep an eye on that. And once we get to our sort of 300 Fahrenheit, we'll start closing those vents just to level off the temperature. All right, so we got our pit lit. As you can see, we've got some smoke coming out the top. Ideally, we're just looking for a very thin blue smoke. So at the moment, we're a little bit puffy, but that'll clean out very shortly. Now you can see we've got a thermometer here, an external thermometer. That'll give us some idea as to what's going on inside the barbecue, but it's not gonna tell us what the grill temperature is. So we've also got these external thermometer units. This is a little ambient probe that's designed to fit on the grill. So that'll give us an idea of what the temperature is where the meat's placed. So we simply open this up and we install that somewhere there. And you can see it's also got another 5 ports, so we can run another thermometer which we can put into the meat. We get a bit of an idea what the temperature of the meat is without lifting the lid. We got some temperature in the barbecue. We're up to about 300 Fahrenheit. I've got some good smoke coming out the top. So it's time to get this baby in and get some smoke on it. As you can see, we're up to temp. I'm gonna put that straight in the middle of the barbecue. And I do my best to give it some shape so we got a nice plump brisket at the end of it. All right, we're just gonna put a little internal thermometer in the brisket, and what that's gonna do is it's gonna give me some feedback on what's going on the barbecue with the lid closed, because every time I open the lid, it's gonna add more time to the cook, all right? So it's gonna stick that in the fattest part there, straight in our second probe hole, and then close the lid, and then I could refer to this screen at any time just to see how the cook's going. We'll give that a couple of hours and we'll come back and see how she's going. We're at 160 Fahrenheit, so somewhere between 145 Fahrenheit and 160 Fahrenheit, the moisture in the meat starts to be pushed out, right? And that creates a stall. So basically the stall means it just sits at that temperature for a really long time. It could be up to 2 hours, right? So a couple of things you can do here, we can wrap it and push it through. You can increase the temperature and it doesn't stall at all. Or what we're gonna do now is we're gonna boat it. So what we do when we boat it is we're gonna capture all of those beautiful juices. So when it comes time to slicing, we've got those juices that we can sort of pour over the slices, and that is really liquid gold. We're gonna start with our boat. I'm just gonna create a bit of a star formation with the foil. A couple more pieces and we'll be done. So when you do buy yourself a brisket, I mean, it's worth noting how marbled or how much fat content is inside the brisket, because that's going to guide you in your cook. If you've got something lean, I wouldn't be boating this at all. I would just simply wrap, all right? But we've got a beautiful brisket here that's got a high fat content, so we can do this boat. You can see we've got some really good bark starting to form. So I guess the playoff here is if we cover it, some of the bark will go soft. So as I said, this guy's got enough fat to just carry through like this, just with a nice little boat. So there you have it. There's the boat. Really simple. 5 or so pieces of foil arranged in a star position, put the brisket in the middle, and then just simply start at one end and roll all the way around until you get this nice little slipper type arrangement, and then the brisket's in the middle. All those juices will be reserved, and as I say, when we slice them, we pour those juices over. It'll be brilliant. Now you noticed I shut the lid as I did that, because if you leave the lid of the smoker open, you're likely to start a fire, and then you know, your temperature's going to rise. So make sure you always keep that lid down. Back into the same position. Put your probe back in there again. Come back in a couple of hours. All right, so you might notice I've got a double glove system going on here. I've got some gardening gloves from your local hardware store, and I've also got some black nitrile gloves, which will give me the water protection, so no moisture will come in to the white glove. And then underneath I've got the white glove, which will give me a couple seconds just to handle some meat so I don't get burnt. And there you have it. After 8, maybe 9 hours, we now have the perfect cooked brisket. Look at the bark on it. It's set, it's beautiful, it's going to be bursting with flavour. I know this thing's going to be juicy, so all we need to do now is grab one of these and get right in there. But first, let's check the jiggle. Perfect. Oh my Lord. Did you hear that? Now, please don't do this at home. I'm only doing this for the sake of the video, but have a look at the moisture in there. I'm really happy with that moisture level. We got a smoke ring all the way around. The only thing left to do is to try this. Perfectly cooked brisket, look at that. no better cut. Cheers.